Welcome back, or welcome to Grateful and Full of Greatness. I'm your host, Mark Glissini. On this podcast, I sit down with guests who, in my opinion, live their lives with the pursuit of greatness in mind. And this platform allows me to discuss and to explain strategies that go into reaching peak performance. This is episode number 8. My guest, Ben Reeves. On top of being one of the kindest people I know, Ben remains one of the best lacrosse players on the planet and is certainly the smartest. As an undergraduate at Yale University, he upheld an almost perfect grade point average, received the Tewaaraton Award his senior year, which is given to the best Division I lacrosse player in America, equivalent to the Heisman Trophy in NCAA football. And he captained Yale's lacrosse national championship winning team in 2018. Now, Ben is at Yale as a medical PhD student, researching congenital, developmental brain disorders, brain inflammation, and brain cancer in a neurosurgery lab. Already, he has over 10 publications in the field. Ben's drive to be the best, just like his achievements thus far, seems limitless. Ben, I appreciate you joining me on here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mark. Happy to be here.
So before we get into this, you and our good friend Ty Warner led the stay-at-home trick shot challenge for the Premier Lacrosse League. What was that all about, and what's your take on this whole pandemic we're going through?
Yeah, so first off, just mentioning Tyler Warner, just wanted to give him a shout out. He just committed to Harvard Medical School today to attend for the next 4 or 5 years.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it's pretty incredible. But so kind of what it stemmed from was just kind of looking at the scope of the situation, seeing the pandemic progress through the country, through the world, I should say. And I kind of noticed a lack of response or a lack of awareness coming from the camp of the PLL. So I kind of talked with Paul Rabel and sent Warner a few texts, wondering if there was anything the PLL could do to kind of increase awareness, especially because I felt like the PLL could reach a younger population of people who I felt, um, young kids might not necessarily be taking it seriously or taking all the precautionary measures that they should be. So I just reached out to Paul Rabel and Mike Rabel and RJ Kaminsky, and they put together an awesome plan to do this stay-at-home trick shot challenge. And, I think it went really well.
Yeah, and one of the most impressive things about the Premier Lacrosse League has been its platform and its reach. So I think you went about it the right way. One thing that you did bring up was touching the younger kids, and that's kind of where I want to start off with you. One of the most influential elements to excellence is one's environment and their closest relationships. Who were some of your biggest positive influences early on, and how have you maintained a conducive environment as you've grown up?
Yeah, so growing up, I grew up as the youngest of three older brothers, and so obviously my dad, my mom, and all my 3 older brothers had a heavy influence on my decisions and what I decided to do with my life. All 3 of my older brothers were athletes. They all played lacrosse, but they were actually soccer players at heart. So kind of picked up the athletic side of things from them, and then all of them are scientists. My oldest brother is a physicist, is a PhD in physics. My other older brother is a PhD in archaeology and anthropology, and then my other brother is an engineer at a company, Thule, in North Haven. So that was kind of my inspiration. That's kind of where I got early exposure to athletics, lacrosse, soccer, football, and also the science aspect, the things that I liked about science. And then kind of getting to Yale, guys like yourself, guys like Michael Quinn, you know, and Coach Shea. I can't speak enough to how much you guys have done for my life, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, I appreciate it, and I think the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And whether you're a good apple or a bad apple, I think there's such an influence on your environment, and you're nurtured no matter what age it is. And I appreciate you saying the nice things about me, and I feel the same way about Quinn and Coach Shea and our environment that we had at Yale. But I watched you grow, and we'll touch upon this throughout the podcast. I watched you grow from a role player to one of the best in the country, if not the best in the country. I like to brag about you when I'm away from you, saying you're the best player I've ever played with. But I watched you balance academics and athletics better than anyone during your time at Yale. What strategies do you use or did you use, and what advice would you give to a student athlete or somebody that's like looking to take on two or more endeavors, like you did as a Yale lacrosse player and a high caliber student athlete?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start by saying that it took some time to figure out. I'm sure you remember my freshman year. I was a bit of a train wreck in the beginning of the fall semester. Uh, I was really trying to balance. I had a bit of what they call Cambridge syndrome, where you don't believe you belong where you are. You don't think you're adequate or qualified. So I was really intimidated by the Yale presence coming from a small upstate New York town. Not too many discussions of Ivy League schools going on there. And so I got to Yale, and I know I would stay up till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning trying to study, in and out of sleep. And then I would sleep in the library and wake up at 6 a.m. and try and read more. And obviously, that's just leading to negative returns. You're just tired all day. You're worse on the field, worse in the classroom. And then I was able to kind of figure it out as I went along. After the first semester, got some good grades back, and was able to kind of pull back on the amount of time or the amount of stress I was putting on myself in the classroom. And then the biggest thing that I took away from my time at Yale that I immediately started applying to my life right as the spring semester started, my freshman year, was probably Yale's and Coach Shea's uh, emphasis on sticking to the process. If you think about what it takes to get into medical school, it's a laundry list of things. You look at a great MCAT score, you look at acing all these classes, organic chemistry too. You look at getting research, you look at getting research publications, you look at getting shadowing experience, and the if you just try and look at that all at once, it can be very intimidating and kind of counterproductive. And so, kind of pulling things apart and looking at them as just taking each step at a time, breaking that all the way down to not even just doing well in this class, but just focusing on what assignment has to be done. That particular day, I ended up adopting weekly and daily plans. So even still today, I have my notebook right here. Everything that I do in the day is planned. I make that at the beginning of the week, and obviously things change a little bit through the week. But yeah, I usually try and stick to a tight schedule, and if things don't get done, the weekend is where missing things get fulfilled.
Yeah, and I think Tyson saying everybody has a plan till they get punched in the mouth. But at least if you have that plan, you can deviate away from it. And Abe Lincoln said, if you gave me 6 hours to chop down a tree, I would spend the first four sharpening the axe. And I think that has a lot to do with you sticking to the process. I think stress in and of itself gets a bad rap. Right. It's just when you hear the word stress, it tastes like something bad. But it really gets a bad rap because it's the wrong kind of stress. And I think when you said you were a train wreck coming in, it's so awesome to hear that you had that Cambridge syndrome. And I say it's awesome because you're such a high peak performer that everybody should know that that's a omnipotent feeling. Right. And that's not like it doesn't
Absolutely.
just because you're a high performer doesn't mean you don't feel low, especially when it comes to your mental health. It's always about going back and taking care of yourself first so that you can take care of others. Ben, in front of my very own eyes, I saw you develop in so many ways. I still remember your freshman year. That's why I was smiling when we were talking about it. But you grew physically as a lacrosse player. You went from a role player your freshman year to the captain and a leader, a Tewaaraton winner.
Mhm.
How did you approach the year to year? Right, you talked about it a little bit in developing a planner, but could you take us through your story throughout Yale because there was a lot of growth there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So just to kind of touch on that, to give a little bit more detail, I showed up at Yale the same height that I am now, like 6'3.5", 6'4", and 170 pounds soaking wet. And so the first thing, and again, with that Cambridge syndrome, and then obviously the older guys, Coach Shea, really helped put me on a track. And so the first thing coming out of that first summer of my freshman year was to put on some weight. And so again, it's all about trusting the process. Well, I thought Newman's strategy to not move it all summer, eat as much food as you can, and just lift 4 hours a day was interesting. I never heard of it before. I just trusted the process, did what I was told to do, and saw the returns immediately coming back in the fall of my sophomore year. And then again, not to beat it into the ground, but trusting the process, trusting the ones that have come before you, like yourself, and just trusting the guys that really know what they're doing, Coach Shea, Coach Newman, and then getting done what you have to get done by whatever means.
Yeah, and I think I had on my very first podcast the the coach that introduced me to the game, and a phrase that he used was "be the one." You know, be the one that's willing to do things differently, be a high achiever, study more, want more, plan more, and I think that's really strong. And where that extends to is if you have that individual belief, it can ripple into the rest of the team. And I
Oh,
felt that when
absolutely.
I was at Yale. I'm sure that you felt it as well. Something that I say to my chaos teammates and throughout the Premier Lacrosse League when it comes to you is don't poke the bear. I rather you move the ball and stay within an offense, but I've seen you being able to take over the game. So getting away from your every day to day and more as an athlete, how do you go about flipping the switch on the field? What sort of process do you take from a little micro snapshot when you're entering a game as an athlete?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I'm definitely a thinker in all aspects of life, and that can be great for many things, but it can also hurt you on a lacrosse field. And so a lot of times, when I'm on the field, the times where you take over or you end up playing a great game, or the times where there's just some sort of situation on the field, and you kind of just you finally snap out of that thought process, and you just dive into it, and you're not even thinking about anything. You're not thinking about what dodge you're going to do. You're not thinking about when the next time you're going to touch the ball is. You're not thinking about this. You're not thinking about that. All the worries kind of go away, and you're just worried about the present moment. Is the ball on your stick? Where is the ball? Go get the ball if you can. Do what you can, and it just becomes easy after that.
No, I would say, and it can hurt you if you're trying to be too smart of a player. Brody Merrill talks about it all the time, and that sometimes it needs you to get hit or get jacked up to stop thinking so much and just be reactive and instinctual, like you were talking about. What's the next
Hmm.
task, whether it's catching the ball or just moving your feet, right? There's a lot to be said about just moving your feet and taking it play by play. You've achieved so much in such a short time. Do you write down your goals, set goals for the future, or obsess over getting something accomplished, or do you choose a path, work hard, and whatever happens, happens?
Yeah, so I actually wish I could show you my computer screen because I have the sticky notes on a Mac computer. I have multiple
Awesome.
sticky notes. One of them is long-term goals, kind of looking 15, 20 years down the road. One of them are kind of intermediate goals, looking over the course of the next year, or there's kind of an in between. That one falls between by the time I leave medical school versus um, and up to about a year from now. And then I have some more immediate goals, which kind of turns into a to-do list about the things that I need to do to accomplish those goals. And again, it's all about the process. If you it's all about focusing on those immediate goals while keeping those larger goals or more long-term goals in kind of the rear view, as a reminder of what you're doing everything for. And if you just check those boxes off today's to-do list, you're one step closer to reaching that 15-year goal.
Yeah, I would say it's so huge to have that incremental process, stick to the Kaizen, the continual improvement of the day to day, but begin with the end in mind. So I like how you had a great balance of both of those. Now I'm going to
Hmm.
switch this over to kind of a more heavier question,
For
in the
sure.
fact that there's a lot of things that have gone so well for you. But is there anything from the downside? Is there a big loss that you can remember, either as a player, a student, or in life, that has stuck with you that adds to your drive as a Yale medical student and as an athlete?
Yeah. So I don't have a particular instance in mind or a particular event that I can tell about, but I kind of touched upon it earlier, and I've touched upon it in previous interviews that I've done while at Yale or in the PLL. But kind of my driving force, as I kind of talked about, I was a bit of a train wreck, had the Cambridge syndrome, and so that kind of actually sticks with me through most things I do, whether it's research, whether I'm in the hospital, whether I'm doing a surgery on a rat, or whether I'm on the lacrosse field. Is I kind of have this lasting, or well, how should I put it? I essentially am one of those people that kind of adopt the mindset that no matter what room you're in, you're the worst at whatever you're doing in the room. And so I kind of use that as a motivating factor to be the hardest working person in the room. So so while it's kind of my greatest downfall mentally, I've kind of been able to figure out a way to transition it or kind of warp it into being kind of my motivating factor. And I honestly think it's the reason why I've been so successful in some of the things that I've done.
I love it, and thank you so much for sharing that. I think there's definitely a seesaw effect in the fact that your biggest weakness could be your greatest strength, and vice versa, right? Everybody thinks that
Hmm.
their biggest strength is not a weakness to them, but they have to definitely keep that in check. Something that I want to bring up that I saw was an amazing TED talk done by a woman named Amy Cuddy, and she talks about how your body language could change everything. And I think there was a drastic event in her life in which she went one or two standard deviations down. I think she either got in a car accident in terms of her IQ, right? So there was a time in which she felt that syndrome that you're talking about, that you don't deserve to be there. And now she's
Hmm.
become a lead expert on how power poses, standing wider, and being bigger with your body language can actually increase testosterone and decrease cortisol to make you more present in the moment. And she uses a great story, and I don't want to be too long-winded about it, but how a student comes into her office at Princeton and says, "I don't deserve to be here." Right.
Hmm.
And she starts crying because she's like, that was me years ago.
Yeah.
And she says, try out these power poses, right, and see if it works for you. And one little side note inside that is, if a person is born blind, and they're told that they win something, they still put their hands over their head
Oh yeah.
in achievement, which just goes to show that the physiology inside your body and acting big, you might just well become big. And I encourage anybody that's listening to this to go check out Amy Cuddy's TED Talk, because that really can show how you just acting bigger, you might just become bigger.
Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of add on to your story there. I was at a speaking at my first conference about a year ago. It was the American Association of Neurological Surgeons Pediatric Subdivision out in Arizona. And so I was out there, and I was my first time. I mean, it wasn't my first time giving a presentation on my research, but normally that's given to the guys in the lab and then your boss, stuff like that. But this is my first time in a room filled with 50 plus, established neurosurgeons and the like. And I still get kind of nervous, even though my boss and all my bosses are neurosurgeons. I still kind of, look at them and think of them as as an otherworldly being. But so I got up there, and I was getting ready to go when my boss, who wasn't able to make it, unfortunately, actually texted me about standing tall, shoulders back, and just really making sure that you look like you belong in the room, and then everything else will follow suit.
right. I think uh, to wrap up that story there by Amy Cuddy, she says that if you're getting ready for an interview, what are you doing? You're usually small, texting, and you're not doing what you should be doing before an interview, which is getting really big, ready to answer questions. And I didn't finish the story in the fact that that woman that came into her office and she told that you need to act bigger and watch yourself participate in class. The very next day, she said something that was monumental in class, and everybody was like, wait, who is that girl? And I haven't noticed
Yeah.
her all semester. And it's proven science, which is really cool. And you might not have an inflated ego, if you will, or the confidence or the belief in yourself, but it takes a little time to get there. And one place to really start is with your posture and your body language. Is
Mhm.
there an overlap between what you do, or a synergy as a medical student and on the field? Is there anything that you use in terms of habits or strategies that are transferable?
Yeah, so I think the kind of the most basic answer for this, while I try and think of some other things, because there definitely is when you're on the lacrosse field, when you're at practice, one of the biggest things is details. You got to be focused on on exactly what you need to do, not straying from the things you were taught. And in research and in medicine, it's absolutely the same way. I've actually told so many people there's so many parallels between my boss, who's a pediatric neurosurgeon at Yale New Haven Hospital, and Coach Shea. They operate the exact same way. I would even go as far as to say they're they're the exact same person. But for both things, whether you're operating or conducting an experiment or on the lacrosse field, if your details aren't perfect, the little things start to slide, and your teammates or other people will end up getting hurt by it.
Right. I think what comes to mind for me is what I preach every single day is that there's nothing more powerful in this world than momentum. And if you want that to go the other way, there's nothing more powerful than inertia against you. And you might
Hmm.
not think that the little details matter, but they add up. And it's kind of what you talked about earlier by having a planner and the sticky notes is if you set things in order and allow yourself, you're giving yourself a fighting chance to find that momentum because it really is powerful. Can you talk
Hmm.
about that a little bit? Maybe it's your Yale lacrosse experience, but more so your life in terms of maybe it was the Newman and your physical growth, but the momentum was very powerful for you in your life.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So momentum, kind of on a smaller scale, is absolutely is everything for me. I'm one of those people that if I have, it's another one of my kind of bad mental aspects is if I'm working on a paper, you say I got a paper in front of me right now. Say I'm working on a paper and I spend 4 or 5 hours on it and things aren't going the way I thought they would, or I'm having a much harder time trying to figure out how to write this paper. Uh, it actually really affects kind of the whole day and how things kind of progress from there. I'm trying to think of a better example to get the point across that I'm trying to make, and I think the best example would be I'm one of those people where if I spend the morning working and then I spend the afternoon, doing whatever, goofing off. I actually have a really hard time getting back into the mindset of work.
Wow.
So I'm kind of one of those people that I'm a bit of a perfectionist in every aspect where right in the morning, if I need a good day of work, I need the whole day to be a perfect day of work or else I can really throw myself off.
I mean
I don't know
that's
if
an
that made sense.
no, it's a perfect example. It's a perfect example, and one of the articles that I want to bring up is called "The Zen of Weightlifting," and it might sound pretty X's and O's and not too grandiose of an idea, but if you read the article, this guy talks about what's it all for? What's the point of weightlifting, and why do we even go to the gym and lift weights? He was asked that by somebody while he was doing a farmer's carry and he didn't have a good answer. So he went back home and he reflected on it and he talked about doing it not as a means to an end, but it's just how you live your life, right? And he
Yeah.
talked about the autonomy that came with it. He talked about the belonging that came with it. And he talked about the community that it gave him, right? Everybody that exercises, he's now part of that community. He's part of the belonging of that community. And then he talked about the autonomy. You have the control over whether you move the weight or not. And I think that's
Hmm.
really goes into the transitive property, a lot of things in life, like what you're talking about and not being able to finish your paper. But really, the idea behind everything, whether it's mental or physical, is that stress plus recovery equals growth. And if you have too much stress and not enough recovery, well, that's going to lead to burnout or injury. But if you have too little of stress and too much recovery, you're getting complacent and you might get stagnant. So it's really interesting how there's that balance or that harmony between the two, stress and growth,
And I think you really
and
touched on a
recovery.
really,
So
sorry.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think you really touched on with that story. One of the most important things about anything you want to do is kind of going back to the long term goals thing, is just keeping in mind a why of what you're doing. I know it's really easy to get lost, whether it's a 6 a.m. practice in the middle of the February and it's 5 degrees outside, or one of Newman's horrific lifts, or you're working on a project in the lab that's just not working out, or you're buried with work and you've been up for 3 days straight, essentially, just stressed the entire time. You got to remember what you're doing it for, and I think that's really important to kind of keep your mind on track.
It's so huge, and questions like who you are and why you do it are so much more important than what you do. I think as a society, we have to get away from saying, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" And it's more about who you are, how you're doing, and what you just said, your why. Do you mind sharing your why or what keeps you going, both as an athlete but as a medical student and chasing the sticky notes there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's my story into becoming a wanting to become a doctor is there isn't like one particular moment. I don't have that aha moment where some people have, they get diagnosed with cancer or something like that. But I do have my mom herself has multiple sclerosis, and so I was kind of able to see, and that's an interesting disease because it's a chronic illness. So you kind of get to see how somebody kind of who I mean, it's not just one instance of an illness that kind of goes away in the next couple of weeks, but you get to see how a patient, how somebody is living with a family, going to work, doing this, doing that outside of the hospital with a chronic illness that lasts every single day for their entire day of their, or I mean, for the entirety of their life. And so when I learned of that in kind of middle school, early high school, that was kind of when I really flipped the switch and started thinking about the medical career, started thinking about a medical career in general. And then, I got to Yale and I started doing the science and everything. And I'm fascinated by the human body, fascinated by everything operates, and, just want to find answers. And so that's kind of my passion for science. And then medicine, it goes well beyond just wanting to help people. But it's a combination of things. You're entrusted with people in kind of or people put their trust in you in the most vulnerable situations they've ever been in their life, and that responsibility is speaks volumes to who these people are and who I want to become. And it's that's kind of my long-winded, convoluted answer for why I want to be a doctor.
No, it's not too long. It was just right, and it made me gulp because I really appreciate it. You and I go way back. We're really good friends, and just you sharing your why, you getting vulnerable like that makes me want to give more too. And I think to summarize this little chunk of the talk here is if you find out who you're doing things for and understand who your why is, something that I try to do every single morning is wake up with others in mind. Right? It's not going to be about me today, but what friend or person that I don't know can I go out there and influence? And I think you said something perfect there right at the tail end was you're just searching for answers, right? And we need more
Hmm.
people that are done asking questions and more searching for answers because there's enough complaining going on. And there's not enough searching. So that was really beautifully said. So thank you very much for sharing.
Hmm.
Um, in mental training, much of the progress comes from using techniques and tools from other peak performers. Are there any books, movies, peak performers, or resources that you like to dive into, or is it all pretty much based on your research?
It's there's nobody in particular, but I do a lot of reading. So I was actually this conversation is I want to send you an article. Remind me to do that at the end of this.
Will do.
It's an article about he's a I can't remember. I read it a while back, but he's a Harvard Business School grad, billion or million multimillionaire who graduated with all of his classmates, and he kind of goes through the article and talks about how everybody turned out in terms of not only their financial or career success, but are they happy? What's their family life look like? And it really kind of helped put into perspective about kind of what really is important in life and what you should be focusing on and how to balance your time and how everything, even family, even your own family, your mother, your father, your brothers, your sisters, everything is kind of a time commitment, and everything needs to be a priority. And if it wants to be a priority, you need to find a way to make it. It's not just going to fall in line because you think it should. So it's a really interesting article. I want to send that to you. But kind of going back to the mental stuff, I don't read too much or go to too many mental coaches or anything of such nature. But again, I find myself reading articles a lot and still applying everything I learned from Brian Kane and Coach
Sure.
Shea back at
Yeah.
Yale. And so I still do the reset. That's a huge one. That's kind of the main one that I still utilize. But yeah,
Based on what you're saying there, and I really love it because it's not necessarily searching for particular self-help books or life coaching books. It's more about what lens are you wearing when you do read, right? And the
yeah,
perspective that you're taking to learn something different and to kind of add it to your hierarchical of thinking, right? Because that allows you. I was just reading the book Thinking Fast and Slow, and the
oh
guy
yeah,
he does a perfect job of Daniel Kahneman. He does a great job
hmm,
of talking about the two systems, right? Your first system and your second system. The second system being deliberate thinking, and the first making all those choices that we just do without even thinking about it. And it's really cool
hmm,
how if you can dive a little bit more into system two, that's where kind of the breakthroughs happen. So just the fact that you're reading it with the lens and finding a nugget like that your time commitment to your closest relationships and all that. And I apologize when there's an elephant in the room, address it. We're doing this remotely because of the pandemic, and there's sometimes going in and out between Ben and I. So thank you for sticking with us. But it's more about reading whatever it is with the lens on of searching for little nuggets that you can add to your repertoire.
Yeah, and I do, and it's kind of tangentially related, as I do a lot of reading in philosophy. You know, if I had to tell you the last 10 books or 5 or 6 books that I've read, I would say probably 80% of them, if not all of them, are philosophy books. And you know, I kind of do that just because, you know, if for I'm really interested in, you know, ethical philosophy, meaning of life philosophy, end of life philosophy, stuff like that. So I mean, it's directly applicable to healthcare, but it's also just, who really knows how to live the best life that is for them. And so it's
Right.
interesting to read about. It's interesting to hear other people's perspectives, and you know, you can take some of that stuff, apply it to your own life. You can ignore other stuff, you know, and then try and find that happy medium of everything.
Yeah, I was just looking over at all my books over here, and something that my best friend Anka shared with me, a philosophy book that I'm now reading that I'm absolutely obsessed with, is Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I don't know if you've heard of it, but
Hmm.
it's definitely something that
I'll write that
you
one
must
down.
read because he really goes so deep into your thinking, and it's just about him riding a motorcycle from the east to the west, and it's really impressive all the thoughts that he has his reader go on that journey with him. So that's really cool. Sticking with this along the same thread of mental training and strategies and staying structured, is there anything that you do every single day or every week? I know you said the planner, but do you have kind of a habitual lifestyle?
Um, you know, I don't think I do. I don't think there's anything that I try and do every day other than kind of obviously the daily plans change, and those are. But I do try and work out 4 times a week for weights, and then try and do some sort of, not necessarily running. I'm not a big distance runner, but try and get some sort of cardiovascular exercise. Whether usually it's like a jump roping with some sort of circuit with burpees or whatnot.
Yeah.
So other than finding time to get that in, uh, again, so when I left, so when I left Yale, I think it's and I played the MLL season. Then after that, I took a huge hiatus from working out, and then I kind of entered into my new lab and my boss, and you know, he's a pediatric neurosurgeon working 20 hours a day, and he's actually hooked up to Team Builder now, doing the football team's lifts at 4:30 in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
There's another neurosurgeon at Yale who she qualified for the Nigerian Olympic team in sprinting. And even when she was a resident, when it was, you know, 14 days straight of 19 hours a day in the hospital, and it's not just, you know, being present in the hospital, but operating, doing things like that, writing papers. You know, she was getting to the gym every morning at 3 a.m. and running 10 miles, didn't miss a single day in her entire residency. So it's kind of stories like that that kind of made me realize that, you know, even though you think you're busy, and you think you don't have time to get things done, people are getting things done.
I mean, that is just so amazing. I'm just shaking my head just because we started this conversation about your environment and how powerful it could be, right? And then you just
Yeah,
bring this, and it comes full circle right here in the fact that she's making you want to give more, and he's making you want to give more. And I think that is what I find among all peak performers, no matter what craft it is not just that they're structured, but it's the way they live their life. You know, it's
hmm,
always, it doesn't matter if it's the research paper or if it's the exercise, they're always willing to do more than expected. And I think that's what you were talking about in terms
yeah.
of surrounding yourself around those people.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's not just, again, it's not just doing the things they're doing, but you know, they do it. It's not just, you know, my boss going to the gym, and you kind of, you know, messing around for 30 minutes doing whatever. He is doing structured Division I football team lifts, and he does them, you know, to max capacity.
Oh my
110%, no
God.
matter what he's doing.
I love that. I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
And he has no reason to, right? Going back to the Zen of weightlifting, he doesn't have to do it. There's not as a means to an
Yeah.
end. He's not going to join the football team, is he? I
Yeah.
mean,
He just likes the feeling of feeling sore, and it's good for him. And he says it's for many people, myself included. Now it's one of those things where he finds that if he doesn't do it, he won't stay sane. It's a
hey,
good change of pace, getting in the weight room. From what I can tell, I can't speak for him, but from what I can tell, it seems pretty vital to his daily routine.
no, and I think that you brought up a really interesting idea, and I'm going to go there for a second. I just had the pleasure of meeting Ben Ives. He was a Navy SEAL for 2 decades, and he was our character coach when I was playing in the NLL this year for the San Diego Seals before our season was suspended. And something that he brings up is a fight every single morning against three things, and that's apathy, doubt, and an anxiety. And what do you do every single day to get away from not caring, right? Because it's very easy to not care. What do you do to overcome doubt, and what do you do from an anxiety perspective? So I think along the same thread of what you're talking about in the fact that he has to do it in order to stay sane, I think it's a great thing for everybody in terms of their mental health. A way to handle the apathy is to find times to decompress, to recover, to
Yeah.
relax, to reflect. That's so important. If I remember when you were getting no sleep at Yale. I mean, it can easily lead to burnout, right? Because
Oh, absolutely.
keeping your energy at a high level is all peak performance is all about. Once you understand how to do your craft really, really well, it's all about maintaining that energy. And then two little nuggets that I want to give in terms of the doubt and the anxiety is, if you want to overcome doubt, a really great way is to have an aim or set those short-term or long-term goals, because that allows you to work towards something and develop the self-belief through momentum. And the last thing is anxiety, and how do we overcome that is get into the present moment. I think rather than being in the future and thinking things too, there might not be, or what if, or all these different things that could possibly be in the future, getting back to the present moment with a deep breath can really do a lot to help your
Yeah.
anxiety. Do you battle any of those? I'm sure you do in terms
Yeah.
of.
Absolutely. So I'll start by talking about how do you stay caring about what you're doing, and I think that's a combination of things. I think the first thing is you got to love what you do, obviously. Number two, and I think this is probably the biggest thing, is just reminding yourself of the why. Every time or every chance you get, sit back, take a deep breath, remind yourself why you're putting yourself through whatever hell you're going through, or whatever it may be. And then third, a little less, um, what's the word? A little less, I don't know, noble is not the
Dark.
right word, but a little, maybe a little darker actually is like me personally, I find myself, even when I don't want to, or I don't think it's going to happen, no matter what I'm doing, I find myself wanting to be the absolute best person at it. So I kind of got to Yale with the expectation. I didn't think I still, to this day, this is the topic, a topic for a different discussion, but don't think that I'm all very special or very good at lacrosse. So when I got to Yale, my kind of long term goal was, I used to dream about people dream in their backyards about playing in a national championship, scoring the game winning goal. I thought it would be better if I had a more realistic expectation, and thought that if I could just get playing time, la da da. But then once I got there, got thrown into everything, I kind of realized that I want to be the absolute best at this. I don't want to be second to anybody out there. I want to, this is what I want to do, and I want to be the best at it. And the same thing happened when it came to research, when it came to medical school. I kind of came in again, similar Cambridge syndrome, enter this lab, with third, fourth year medical students, neurosurgical residents, and you're kind of like, well, I'm just happy to be here at first, and then within just 2 days, 2 or 3 days, I find myself saying, I know he's a resident, but I want to do this paper better than him, do this experiment better than him. It's that kind of stuff, and that's something I didn't know that was in me for a very long time. But I really can't shake it, no matter whatever it is that I'm doing. And
I mean,
then
it's so awesome, Ben, in terms of you talking to yourself rather than listening to yourself. Because the thing that keeps coming up in this conversation that is so awesome is the fact that you chopped away at that Cambridge system by taking it incrementally, right? You didn't
Hmm.
show up that you're going to take over right from the start. You arrived, you were happy to be there in the present moment, and then you started saying, I want this more. And you started talking to yourself, and it became a self-fulfilling prophecy rather than just listening to yourself and succumbing to the pressure. Keep going.
Yeah, and then what coming speaking to that, the best thing to do to become the best at what you're doing. I talked about those third, fourth year medical students, neurosurgery residents. Is again, similar to you, Michael Quinn, Harry Kacharzik, the older guys in the lacrosse team, or Coach Shea. It's all about just kind of trusting the process, trusting what they're telling you is indeed what is going to help you get to the level that they're at, and then just doing everything 110%, whether it's filling out a random patient database form or doing something that is probably meaningless in the grand scheme of things, but just really hampering down, doubling down on the desire to want to do everything you do perfectly and with the most effort you can give in that particular thing. And then kind of moving on from that and talking about your question about doubt. Yeah, as I mentioned, with the whole kind of feeling like the worst person in the room, no matter what I'm doing, is definitely have a lot of doubts. I've definitely prescribed to kind of what Kaner used to talk about in the fake it till you make it, and that goes in, pulls back in the body posture and everything. When you walk into a room in a lab, or and it's filled with attending neurosurgeons, or you walk onto a PLL field and you're standing next to some of the guys you grew up watching. It's again, just got to hold your shoulders back, hold your head high, and just kind of act like you belong there. And what I'm finding in life is that if you put the work forward and you act like you belong, you eventually will belong.
Yeah, I really love that. And to take fake it to make it to another level, something that I'm a big proponent of is act it until you become it, right? Because in
Hmm.
deep down in your heart, when you're faking it, you know it, and it's about telling yourself the truth, being integrous with yourself, and being honest, all encompassing in life. And I think if you can act it until you become it, that just means first put your shoulders back, then take care of the next task, and we'll go from there. So I want to continue on here. Although in the realm of peak performance, we stay away from using words like talent and gifts and natural ability, because that embodies fixed mindset that you can't change or that you can't evolve. And
Hmm.
growth mindset, which was trademarked by Dr. Carol Dweck, who's a psychologist and a Yale grad. She talks about that everything can improve and evolve. I don't want to completely ignore luck and opportunity. So, can I ask you, upon reflection, what are some lucky breaks or great opportunities that you came across? Obviously, you've always been a hard worker, and you've planned your days out and stuff like that, and you've worked for where you are. But what are some lucky breaks or great opportunities that have allowed you to get to the path you are today?
Well, for starters, going all the way back to high school, I was not very heavily recruited coming out of college. About the only offer that I had in the fall of my senior year was Hobart. And so, well, I think I would have really enjoyed my time at Hobart and would love playing for that team. I would consider myself pretty lucky that Coach Shea happened to stop by my scrimmage, watching some other kid at the tryouts for the Under Armour All American lacrosse team. And so, and then I think I've talked about this with you before, but I actually was not a very good high school student. I really devoted most of my time in high school to really focusing on lacrosse, and that's why it's the only thing I lived, breathed, and ate lacrosse. It was the only thing I did. I used to shoot 400, 500 lacrosse balls a day, 7 times a week. I thought I was lifting efficiently every day, but then we've already talked about the lifting story. But so that was kind of my only focus. So I'd also say that I'm pretty fortunate to have snuck into Yale. I have my classmates to thank for that, as Yale works on the average academic index score, so your team just needs to have an average number. So I think I could thank guys like Connor Mackey and Jerry, who came in with sky high AI
Me too,
scores.
man. Me too, man.
Yeah, but so I think, that's kind of the one thing that kind of jumps into my mind, is that has to be the luckiest thing that's ever happened to me. And then
No,
again, it kind
it's
of
great.
happened again in research. So I was in a pulmonary fibrosis lab. I did that for 2 years between my undergrad time and then my first year out of undergrad. And we knocked a gene out of mice thinking it'd be protective against lung fibrosis. And, I really enjoyed the work I did, but I knew I didn't want to do that kind of medicine when I was older, or more established, I should say. And so we knocked a gene out of macrophages in mice, thinking that it'd be protective against fibrosis, and all of them got hydrocephalus, which is this swelling of the ventricular system of the brain, essentially. Basically just these holes in your brain that carry fluid and kind of cushion your brain from impact, and then also transport, ions, nutrients, whatever it may be. But anyway, and then, so that's my project. So we emailed, my current boss now, and he's like, yeah, we'd love to take the project. I started working back and forth, and then I realized I really, really loved what he was doing down in his lab. And I made the transition, and I haven't looked back since, and I've loved every minute of it. So I also think, it's kind of funny how some accidental project, all these mice started getting hydrocephalus for no reason. Well, not for no reason, but for what we thought was no reason, and then it kind of led me to where I am today and put me on the path of what I want to do with my life, which is currently to be a neurosurgeon eventually, but that could be subject to change. So don't quote me.
Yeah, no, I love it, and I think there's something to be said about the component or factor of timing. There, Bill Gross does a TED talk on it. Why some startups succeed and others fail, and it can be transferable to a business, a relationship, or an individual. Like the opportunities that you came across. It was just timing, right? You just were at the
Hmm.
right place or at a time. Shay watching you on a random field, or you being transferred from one research to the other. There's, as long as you put the work in, opportunity will find you, and I firmly believe that, and I know you're a believer of that too. I have such a great
Absolutely.
story for you, and I want to share it for you. So it's just a true story. So after your 2017 season, I was in Atlanta
Okay.
with some of my pro teammates having lunch before a game, and I made this comment, and I promise this is true. If Ben Reeves has a good or a better year next season, he will win the Tewaaraton Award and Yale will win the national championship. I'm not kidding. The Maryland and Duke alumni that I was with got up from the table, left the restaurant laughing at me and making fun of the Ivy League, saying that, quote, it lacked good competition. And they said I was an idiot. And
Yeah.
so thank you. In 2018, you proved me right. I do have a question along that. So, what was it
Yeah.
about that team in 2018, your senior year, that made it possible for you guys to win it all?
It's I think it's all the credit goes to the guys that came before us. I mean, we were just applying everything that was taught. I mean, myself, I'll just speak for myself for the current moment, but as captain, I was just applying everything I learned from the guys that came before me, from the guys that I was at Yale with when I was younger, and the guys that graduated before I was there, who have given me ample advice. And so, we just kind of took Coach Shay's model, and what you guys and all older Yale alumni have spent, what is it now, near 20 years cultivating. And we happen to have a fairly talented team, and we were able to stick to the details, stick to the process, stick to the whole coach. I don't even know what you want to call it Coach Shay's philosophy. Stick to Coach Shay's philosophy,
It's a
and
good one. I'll just call it a great one.
yeah. And so I think it's I can't say that it was all that different from some of the previous years that I was at Yale in terms of feeling. The team felt as close as it's ever been, and we were doing all the right things, and it kind of all came together.
And one of the things, and I would agree with you first and foremost, that I even felt the same. Even winning 3 out of 4 Ivy championships when I was there, I felt like it was the people before me at the Yale Lacrosse program that really established the culture. I think that was a separating factor. The sports science coming involved, and then kind of never losing that belief and paying attention to the details. You guys didn't even win the Ivies that year, right?
Yeah, we
You
got
guys.
smoked.
Yeah, and I think that is transferable to life, right? You can still win in life with losing some battles, right? That you're going to win the war, but you can lose battles along the way. You guys didn't win the Ivies; you got smoked in the Ivies, and then you won the national championships,
We
and that there's something to be said about that.
Well, I actually I texted Coach Shea. It can't be that long ago, maybe a few weeks ago, asking him if he thought if we beat Cornell, would we win the national championship, and he said absolutely not. He doesn't think we would have.
I don't I, I don't think so either.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of came. we kind of came in, and so I'll tell you what I think happened. Is we that was the year, the second half of that year, we won. What was it, 8 straight games by like 8 goals or plus. I mean, we didn't have a close game since we lost to Bucknell in the middle of or in early April or late March, whenever it was. And I think what happened was the Cornell game. Speaking specifically on that, is it was 6-5 at halftime. We were down by 1 goal, or no, it was either 5-5 or 6-5. And the atmosphere of the halftime locker room was, you would have thought we were down by 20 goals with 2 minutes left in the national
Right.
championship. It
Right.
was dead in there. Normally the half. I mean, you've been in a halftime locker room when during a close game. And it's usually people are amped up, people are fired up. But this was just different. You could kind of tell that things were. This team wasn't used to playing in close games. I think people fully expected to win handedly, to win by 5, 6, 7+ goals again. And so
Right.
I think, without getting that out of our system when we did, if we had, we would definitely come across a close game in the NCAAs, and that probably would have happened later on. And so kind of relayed that back to Coach Shea. Coach Shea agreed. The other seniors agreed. And we really harped on that. And I think it was humbling. And that's kind of where we made for our run from there.
Yeah, and if that perfect example of that story, if a team doesn't, if an individual doesn't deal with adversity or discomfort all along a season or upbringing or other, they don't know what it's like to perform when the pressure's on. So I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot to be said about what you did, what you just pointed out. Staying on the topic of senior year, I feel awful for these seniors that have lost their final season. What are your
Oh,
thoughts,
yeah.
knowing how hard it is, the hard work that you put in?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely terrible. You spend, for me personally, and many of these other guys, you spent, every night since you were 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, kind of dreaming of the opportunity to play at the sport's highest level, or close to the sport's highest level in Division One lacrosse. And your senior season's a special one. You only get 4 years of eligibility in the NCAA, and many guys, as you've seen the NCAA commercials, many guys don't have the opportunity to keep playing after college. So it's really heartbreaking to see. I spoke with Dean Chun about the decision itself, and while I understand the decision that was made and can sympathize with kind of everything else going on, it's not just athletes that are affected, but you have art students whose big senior symposium or art show got canceled, or theater majors whose big performance of Wicked or whatever they're doing that year, their finally the star role is kind of taken away from them. And it's really unfortunate for everybody involved, and it's just these unprecedented times kind of lead to shitty situations.
Yeah, and what I would say is just it's more painful than an injury.
Yeah.
It's not like you're getting sat by a coach and not playing. It was just taken away from you, the opportunity, everything. And I think it just circles back to the importance of training, being kind to other people, developing relationships for not a means to an end, right? Because if
Hmm.
you do when it does get taken away from you, when you make everything it your everything, then when it's gone, you have nothing. So I really feel for people, but I really think it puts in great perspective the importance of doing everything the same way, and providing your energy, and seizing the moment, and really giving your full
Yeah.
heart to wherever you are.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely an incredible example of the classic. You never know when it's going to be taken away from you. So kind of the monotony of practice every day, or the monotony of whatever you're doing in life every single day. If it's for a long-term goal, or you think it's what you want to do with your life, or it's important to you, even the boring stuff, you're going to miss it when it's gone, and you never know when it's going to get ripped away from you. So really try and enjoy everything you're doing, even the boring stuff.
Yeah, and given this current circumstances, given the current circumstances of this pandemic, how has your routine changed at all?
Yeah, so my typical day prior to the pandemic was kind of get up at 6:30, go to the lab, So I actually used to go to my desk in my room and type and work and read papers or type papers, whatever I was doing that day, from about 7 or 6:30 to 9 o'clock, and then I would head into the lab, do experiments. At some point in the day, whenever I had put this antibody on for 2 hours, I would go lift in the middle of the day. I've really found myself enjoying the midday lifts, kind of breaking up the day, a nice break from just
The
thinking all
grind.
day
The
about
grind,
science.
yeah.
And then back to the lab, and then stay there till. So lab is an interesting place because it's one of those things where you 1 week or 1 day you may be there until 2 o'clock in the morning, based on how many rats gave birth or so many different factors. Other times you may actually have not a lot to do, and you can squeak out of there early and read papers or get ahead on data analysis, stuff like that. So it's there's not an over. I don't have like a specific schedule, but that's kind of the general idea.
And you give so much time to your papers and your work. Do you have a feeling of guilt when you don't do it, or what kind of emotions do you have, and how do you handle not being too stressed out?
Yeah, so I wouldn't. I don't know if I would call it guilt, but you can ask my girlfriend and the people around me. I'm definitely one of those people that kind of freak out if I have too much time without anything to do.
Got it.
Kind of lose my mind, and if I don't find myself doing something productive each and every day, whether it's even if it's a weekend or vacation or something, you still want to squeak a lift in or something like that. I become very restless,
Were
and
you always like that, or was that something that came with momentum?
um, I've always kind of been like that, but I think it started from a place of guilt back in high school, where if I was feeling lazy one day and didn't, do play my wall ball, do my shooting, or do my lifting, whatever it was, I would feel pretty guilty, and I would feel pretty awful. I don't really get that awful feeling anymore. It's kind of evolved into just you should be doing. I mean, I guess it's in one way or another. It's guilt, but it's some feeling of, well, it's not guilt, I would say, because it's not. I don't feel like I have to do it. I really do want to do it, and
Mm.
I might not want to do the task. So or like last week, I had to input like 50 patient records that were previously just on paper into a database, and while I don't want to do it, I know that in doing so, I want to be the best at what I'm
Right.
doing. And going through these records, I know it was a great opportunity to learn about. You're going to find out that I learned probably 15 diseases that I've never even heard of before that some of these people had, and it was filled with like MRIs of brains, and I did some practice on reading the MRIs with the conditions they had listed and whatnot. So it kind of speaks again to just wanting to do everything at 110%. You never know what you can get out of it. Because if I just did that, plugged in the numbers, it could have been a full day of work, but learned nothing.
Right.
So
And
it's that kind of stuff.
I love it. And I always talk about this days, weeks, and months of discipline before it turns into desire. And you're kind of talking about a mixture of the discipline and the desire. And the difference between the two is the I got to and I have to, right? Input all those numbers. And then the opposite into the desire is I get to and I want to. And there's going to be activities throughout your day or chores, if you will, or opportunities, right? It's depending on the light that you shine on it. But I know that the best always take out the trash, the same energy that they do at the sexy stuff. So that's the
Yeah.
really cool takeaway that you have there. Do you have any mottos or mantras that you follow, or quotes that you come back to, or things that keep you on steady pace that you kind of always use as an anchor to keep you motivated?
I think I missed the start of the question. Were there any quotes or any books or anything like that?
No, just any mottos or mantras or things that you go from a mindset perspective to stay on track or stay motivated.
Other than fake it till you make it, I don't think I don't have anything that I can think of off the top of my head uh, at the moment.
That's okay.
Yeah, I
Uh,
don't think so.
so you did a awesome job of thanking the guys that came before you in Yale Lacrosse. I want to do the same for any of them that are listening. I think what Coach Shea has and what the whatever it is in in that program that we can't put our finger on in terms of having a word for it. It is special. You've done a great job of showing the gratitude of the people that have really helped you along the way, and that's kind of why I made this podcast, is because it's grateful and full of greatness. And you're
Hmm.
certainly full of greatness. So I kind of want to wrap it up by asking you, what's your definition of greatness, and how do you define it?
Yeah, and I think this is going to be straight from the words or straight from the mouth of my dad. My dad is one of those guys, unlike many people my age, or probably many people in general, who does not look at career achievements or success in professional success or whatever it is as necessarily meaning greatness or achievement. And it kind of goes back to that article that I was talking about earlier, that I think that if you step back, when you're 30, 40, 60 or years older before you're on your deathbed, and you look at the people around you, is I think is the real marker or for the impression you're going to leave, who you were as a person. And if you can get to that point in your life and you can look at the people around you and say that this is exactly everything I wanted, and I think that would qualify as greatness.
Wow, I love that, and that's all encompassing. It's not necessarily the craft that you're a part of. It's kind of how you do the job, and at that eulogy, what do you want said about you? So I really appreciate that. And finish by saying, what's next for Ben Reeves? You're at medical school now, and what all the achievements that I've put out there. You just won the Premier Lacrosse League championship, so the
Hmm.
accomplishments continue to roll in for you. But what's next for you, man?
Yeah, so I have anywhere between 4 to 7 more years of medical school. Gonna try and play in the PLL every summer that I can. I don't know when that's gonna become, just simply too much to juggle, or when it's gonna become simply impossible because you'll have obligations at both locations at the same time. But so I want to keep playing lacrosse, go to medical school. After medical school, at current moment, it's subject to change. I haven't even spent a single day formally training in the hospital. So on like my clerkships or anything, which is where you really figure out what you want to do. But if I was a betting man, I would say in 7 years, I'd like to apply to neurosurgery residency, go through there, and then see where it takes me.
Yeah, and I love that, man. And I've ever since I met you several years ago when I was a junior at Yale and you were a freshman. I'm just so grateful for our friendship. I love you. I think the world of you, and I really appreciate you sharing your story. I think young individuals that are putting the time in their craft can look up to you, but you've also shared a lot of things, regardless of the age of the individual, is going to take a lot away from this conversation. So I appreciate you coming on, Ben, and thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I feel the same way about yourself, and of all the people that I've met on my road and lacrosse and in my professional realm, is well, you're what's the word for it? I mean, I admire you more than I admire most in terms of you know who you are, you stick to what you want to do, and you get it done, and it's truly admirable.
Thanks, Ben.